Some people enter your life like a storm, not because they are powerful, not because they are wise, not because they deserve control over your peace, but because something about them exposes the places inside you that are not yet free. A difficult person can make you question yourself in minutes. They can pull you into arguments you promised yourself you would avoid. They can make your body tense before they finish a sentence. They can make you rehearse conversations in your head, defend yourself in silence, and lose sleep over things you wish did not matter. And the natural response is to think, I need this person to change so I can finally feel okay. But here is the hidden truth. Sometimes the person who disturbs your peace is showing you exactly where your peace still depends on other people. That does not make their behavior right. It does not mean you should tolerate disrespect, manipulation, cruelty, or emotional chaos. It means something deeper. The difficult person is not always just your enemy. Sometimes they are your training ground. They show you where your boundaries are weak. They show you where your reactions are automatic. They show you where approval still controls you, where anger still owns you, where silence feels impossible, where guilt still makes your decisions. And if you learn how to read the lesson without worshiping the pain, everything changes. You stop asking, why are they like this? And you begin asking, what is this situation training in me? That one question can turn frustration into growth. Because the goal is not to become cold. The goal is to become clear. The goal is not to win every interaction. The goal is to stop losing yourself inside them. Once you understand this, difficult people no longer have the same power over your emotional state. They may still be difficult. They may still be unfair. They may still misunderstand you. But they no longer get unlimited access to your nervous system, your identity, your decisions, or your inner life. That is the difference. Most people spend years trying to escape difficult people without realizing that the real prison is not always the person. It is the reaction pattern. And once that pattern changes, your entire life begins to feel different. You do not become untouchable because no one can challenge you. You become stronger because challenge no longer controls you. Now here is where the training begins. The first lesson difficult people teach is emotional visibility. They reveal what ordinary life hides. When life is calm, it is easy to believe you are patient. It is easy to believe you are confident. It is easy to believe you are emotionally mature, forgiving, grounded, and centered. But calm environments do not test maturity. They only display comfort. A difficult person enters the room and suddenly everything hidden rises to the surface. The irritation you thought you had mastered. The insecurity you thought you had healed. The need to explain yourself. The urge to correct every false assumption. The fear of being disliked. The hunger to be understood by someone who may not be capable of understanding you. That is not failure. That is exposure. And exposure is uncomfortable because it shows you what is still alive inside you. A rude comment may reveal a wound around respect. A dismissive tone may reveal a wound around being ignored. A controlling person may reveal how quickly you abandon your authority when someone sounds more certain than you. A critical person may reveal how much of your self-worth is still rented from other people's opinions. This is where most people get stuck. They focus only on the other person's behavior. They say, they are disrespectful, they are selfish, they are impossible, they are negative. And maybe they are. But if you stop there, you miss the part that belongs to you. You cannot always control what they reveal. But you can decide what you do with what gets revealed. That is the training. A difficult person becomes useful, not because they are right, but because your reaction contains information. Your anger tells you where a line may have been crossed. Your anxiety tells you where you may feel unsafe or uncertain. Your urge to over-explain tells you where you still believe your worth depends on being understood. Your resentment tells you where you may have said yes when something inside you already knew the answer was no. Your exhaustion tells you where access has been given too freely. These emotions are not enemies. They are signals. But if you treat every signal like a command, you become reactive. If anger appears and you immediately attack, anger owns you. If anxiety appears and you immediately people please, anxiety owns you. If guilt appears and you immediately surrender your boundary, guilt owns you. The goal is not to stop feeling. The goal is to stop being ruled by the first feeling that arrives. That is emotional maturity, not the absence of emotion. The ability to pause between emotion and action. And difficult people give you endless practice in that pause. They may trigger you, but they also give you the chance to notice the trigger before it becomes your behavior. They may pressure you, but they also give you the chance to feel pressure without obeying it. They may criticize you, but they also give you the chance to hear criticism without handing over your identity. That pause may look small, but it is sacred. In that pause, you are no longer just a reaction. You are a person with choice. And the more you practice that choice, the less power difficult people have over your inner world. That is where growth begins. Not when the difficult person changes, when your automatic response stops being automatic. But there is another layer to this. Difficult people also train your boundaries. And boundaries are not just words you say after someone goes too far. Boundaries are the way you teach your life what you will no longer betray. Many people think boundaries are about controlling others. They say, I need them to stop talking like that. I need them to stop acting like that. I need them to stop being this way. But a real boundary is not an attempt to control another person. It is a decision about what you will do when certain behavior enters your space. That is why boundaries feel so difficult. Because they are not mainly about the other person. They are about your courage. A boundary says, I cannot make you respectful, but I can choose not to continue a conversation where disrespect is the price of entry. A boundary says, I cannot force you to understand me, but I can stop begging for understanding from someone committed to misunderstanding. A boundary says, I cannot control your reaction, but I can control how much of myself I sacrifice to manage it. This is where difficult people become powerful teachers. Because easy people rarely test your boundaries. They do not push. They do not guilt trip. They do not twist your words. They do not punish your honesty. They do not act offended when you say no. Difficult people do. And that is why they reveal whether your boundaries are real or only theoretical. It is easy to say, I need to protect my peace. It is harder to protect your peace when someone calls you selfish for doing it. It is easy to say, I am done over-explaining. It is harder when someone deliberately misunderstands you and every part of your body wants to prove your innocence. It is easy to say, I know my worth. It is harder when a difficult person treats your worth as negotiable. That is the test, not whether you can state a boundary in a calm moment, whether you can hold it when guilt, fear, anger, and pressure arrive. And most people fail here, not because they are weak, but because they confuse discomfort with danger. They feel guilty and assume they did something wrong. They feel anxious and assume they need to fix the situation. They feel someone's disappointment and assume they must repair it. But discomfort is not always a warning to stop. Sometimes discomfort is the price of becoming honest. The first time you stop rescuing someone from the consequences of their behavior, you may feel cruel. The first time you end a conversation instead of defending yourself, you may feel unfinished. The first time you say, "That does not work for me," without writing a speech to justify it, you may feel exposed. That feeling does not mean the boundary is wrong. It means the old version of you is losing control. That is the trap. A difficult person often knows, consciously or unconsciously, how to pull you back into your old role. If you have always been the peacemaker, they may make your peace feel selfish. If you have always been the fixer, they may make their chaos feel like your responsibility. If you have always been the agreeable one, they may make your disagreement feel like betrayal. If you have always absorbed tension, they may act shocked when you stop absorbing it. But your growth requires a new agreement with yourself. You are allowed to be kind without being available for everything. You are allowed to care without becoming responsible for every emotional fire. You are allowed to understand someone's pain without volunteering to be controlled by it. That is a boundary, not a wall around your heart, a door with a lock, and you decide who gets access, under what conditions, and for how long. A difficult person does not only test your boundaries with them, they test your loyalty to yourself. Because in the presence of difficult people, many people abandon themselves quietly. They laugh at things that hurt. They say yes while their chest says no. They soften the truth until it becomes a lie. They tolerate disrespect in the name of being mature. They make themselves smaller so another person does not feel challenged. And over time, this self-abandonment becomes a lifestyle. You begin to think peace means silence. You begin to think love means endurance. You begin to think being a good person means having no limits. But that is not goodness. That is erasure. And no relationship, workplace, family system, friendship, partnership, or social circle is worth the slow disappearance of your inner authority. This is where difficult people train self-respect. Not the loud kind, the quiet kind. The kind that no longer needs to announce itself. Real self-respect is not dramatic. It is not aggressive. It is not always visible from the outside. Sometimes self-respect is not replying to the message designed to provoke you. Sometimes it is saying, "I am not available for this conversation right now." Sometimes it is letting someone think what they want, because correcting them would cost too much of your peace. Sometimes it is leaving the room before you become someone you do not respect. Sometimes it is refusing to perform calmness while accepting harm. Self-respect is the moment you stop negotiating with patterns that keep damaging you. And difficult people force that question to the surface. How much of yourself are you willing to lose to keep someone else comfortable? That question can change your life, because difficult people often expose the hidden contract you have been living under. The contract that says, "I will be acceptable if I am easy." The contract that says, "I will be loved if I do not have needs." The contract that says, "I will be safe if I keep everyone pleased." The contract that says, "I will avoid conflict if I avoid honesty." But the cost of that contract is too high. You may keep people around you, but lose contact with yourself. You may avoid conflict outside, but create conflict inside. You may be praised for being patient, flexible, forgiving, and understanding, while privately feeling resentful, exhausted, and unseen. That is not peace. That is emotional debt. And eventually, the debt comes due. It comes due as resentment. It comes due as burnout. It comes due as numbness. It comes due as sudden anger that seems too big for the moment because it has been collecting interest for years. This is why difficult people can become a turning point. They make the old arrangement impossible to ignore. They push against false peace until the real issue appears. The issue is not just them. The issue is what you have been trained to tolerate. And once you see that clearly, you begin to change. You stop confusing being liked with being aligned. You stop confusing being needed with being valued. You stop confusing someone's access to you with someone's right to you. That is the difference. And now here is where it gets more psychologically precise. Difficult people train your ability to separate facts from emotional noise. In any tense interaction, two things usually happen at once. There is the actual situation, and there is the emotional atmosphere around the situation. Most people react to the atmosphere. A harsh tone, a raised eyebrow, a dismissive sigh, a dramatic accusation, a sudden silence, a passive-aggressive comment. The atmosphere can become so loud that you lose track of the facts. You begin responding to pressure instead of truth. You begin defending against implications instead of addressing reality. You begin trying to calm the room instead of clarifying the issue. Difficult people often create emotional fog. Whether intentionally or not, they pull you into confusion. They may exaggerate. They may shift the focus. They may make your reaction the problem instead of the original issue. They may speak with such certainty that you start doubting what you know. They may turn a simple boundary into a moral trial. And if you are not grounded, you get lost. You explain too much. Then defend too much. Then apologize for things you did not do. Then accept responsibility for feelings you did not create. Then leave the conversation unsure what even happened. That is emotional noise. And your training is learning to come back to the facts. What was said? What was done? What was requested? What boundary was crossed? What responsibility actually belongs to me? What responsibility does not? These questions are not cold. They are clarifying. They protect you from being dragged into the fog. A difficult person may say, "You never care about anyone but yourself." That is noise. The fact may be, you said no to one request. A difficult person may say, "You have changed." That may be noise. The fact may be, you stopped tolerating something they were used to getting away with. A difficult person may say, "I guess I just cannot say anything to you anymore." That may be noise. The fact may be, you ask them not to insult you while speaking. When you separate facts from noise, you become much harder to manipulate. Not because you become suspicious of everyone, because you stop accepting emotional intensity as evidence. That is powerful. A person can be loud and still be wrong. A person can be upset and still be unfair. A person can sound hurt and still be avoiding accountability. A person can accuse you strongly and still be projecting. Emotional intensity is not proof. And once you understand that, you stop reacting to volume. You start responding to truth. This does not mean you dismiss people's feelings. It means you stop letting feelings rewrite reality. That is a rare kind of maturity. Because many people either become overly emotional or overly detached. They either drown in feelings or deny them completely. But the strong person learns to hold both. I can care that you are upset and still not accept your accusation. I can understand that you are disappointed and still not change my boundary. I can listen to your perspective and still trust what I experienced. I can be compassionate and still be clear. That is emotional precision. And difficult people train it better than comfortable people ever could. Because comfortable people rarely force you to practice clarity under pressure. Difficult people do. They put pressure on your perception. They test whether you can stay connected to reality while someone else tries to overwhelm it. They reveal whether you can remain accurate when the atmosphere becomes charged. And this is one of the most valuable skills you can build. Because life will not always speak gently. People will not always be fair. Rooms will not always be calm. But if you can stay clear when things get emotionally loud, you become a different kind of person. Less shaken, less available for confusion, less dependent on perfect conditions. That is strength. Not hardness. Strength. But there is another layer beneath all of this. Difficult people train your ego. And this may be the most uncomfortable lesson of all. Because the ego does not always look arrogant. Sometimes the ego looks wounded. Sometimes it looks like defensiveness. Sometimes it looks like the desperate need to be seen as good. Sometimes it looks like the inability to let someone misunderstand you. Sometimes it looks like the urge to win an argument that is not worth winning. The ego says, I cannot let them think that about me. The ego says, I need the last word. The ego says, they need to know I am right. The ego says, if I do not defend myself, they win. And difficult people know how to wake up that part of you. A false accusation, a sarcastic comment, a public criticism, a dismissive tone, an unfair version of the story. Suddenly, your whole body wants to fight for your image, not your truth, your image. And this is where everything changes. Because many unnecessary battles are not fought for justice. They are fought for ego relief. You want the discomfort of being misunderstood to end. You want the other person to admit what you already know. You want the record corrected. You want the room to see your side. And sometimes that is necessary. Sometimes truth must be spoken. Sometimes silence would protect dysfunction. Sometimes you do need to clarify, confront, report, document, or walk away with words. But many times, the ego turns a small moment into a prison. You keep replaying the conversation. You keep crafting the perfect response. You keep imagining how to expose them, prove them wrong, make them regret it. And while they may have moved on, they are still living inside your mind. That is the cost. You may win the argument and lose your peace. You may prove your point and lose your dignity. You may correct the story and still remain emotionally chained to the storyteller. So difficult people train a question most people avoid. What am I really trying to protect right now? My values? My boundary? My safety? My responsibility? Or my image? That question is sharp. It cuts through performance. Because if you are protecting your values, you can act with calm strength. If you are protecting your boundary, you can be clear and direct. If you are protecting your safety, you can remove yourself or take appropriate action. But if you are protecting your image, you may become trapped in endless explanation. You may become dependent on the approval of people whose judgment you do not even respect. That is the trap. You cannot be internally free while needing every person to see you correctly. Some people will misunderstand you because they lack information. Some will misunderstand you because they lack emotional maturity. Some will misunderstand you because the version of you that serves their story is more useful to them than the truth. And some will misunderstand you because they benefit from misunderstanding you. You cannot live your life trying to correct every distorted mirror. At some point, self-respect means letting a false version of you exist in someone else's mind without chasing it down. That is not weakness. That is sovereignty. A person who must be understood by everyone can be controlled by anyone. But a person who can stand calmly in the presence of misunderstanding becomes difficult to manipulate. They no longer rush to perform innocence. They no longer beg for recognition. They no longer collapse when someone disapproves. They know who they are, and they let time, consistency, and character speak louder than panic. This is not easy. It requires mourning the fantasy that everyone will be fair. It requires releasing the childhood hope that if you explain yourself perfectly, every heart will soften. Some people do not want clarity. They want control. Some do not want truth. They want advantage. Some do not want resolution. They want emotional leverage. Once you accept this, you stop bringing honesty to conversations that are really power games. You stop using vulnerability where discernment is required. You stop handing your inner life to people who only know how to weaponize it. And this is where maturity becomes quieter. You do not need to win every exchange. You do not need to answer every bait. You do not need to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not need to prove your calm by staying in places designed to disturb you. Sometimes the highest response is not a better argument. It is a cleaner exit. And difficult people train you to know the difference. Now here is something most people miss. Difficult people can also train compassion, but only when compassion is not confused with surrender. This is delicate, because when people hear compassion, they often think it means excusing behavior. They think it means saying, they had a hard life, so I should tolerate being mistreated. No, that is not compassion. That is self-abandonment dressed in spiritual language. Real compassion sees the humanity of another person without handing them the steering wheel of your life. It can say, I understand that you may be acting from fear. And also say, I will not allow that fear to become control over me. It can say, I recognize that your anger may come from pain. And also say, I will not stand here while that anger is thrown at me. It can say, I can see the child in you that was hurt. And also say, the adult in you is still responsible for how you behave. That is mature compassion. It has eyes. It has boundaries. It does not confuse empathy with access. Difficult people often become difficult for reasons that make sense. Maybe they grew up in chaos and learned control as survival. Maybe they were humiliated and learned criticism as protection. Maybe they were ignored and learned intensity as a way to be heard. Maybe they were betrayed and learned suspicion as a shield. Maybe they never learned how to regulate emotion, apologize honestly, or feel secure without dominating the room. Understanding this can soften your heart, but it should not weaken your spine. Because understanding why someone behaves a certain way does not obligate you to become the place where that behavior continues. That is the difference. Compassion without boundaries becomes enabling. Boundaries without compassion can become hardness. But compassion with boundaries becomes wisdom. And difficult people train that balance. They teach you to see beyond the surface without becoming naive. They teach you to notice pain without volunteering to be punished by it. They teach you that not every wound deserves the same access to your life. This is where your emotional world becomes more refined. Instead of labeling people simply as good or bad, you begin to see patterns. You begin to recognize the insecure person who needs superiority, the fearful person who needs control, the ashamed person who attacks first, the lonely person who creates drama to feel significant, the wounded person who turns closeness into conflict, the immature person who experiences boundaries as rejection. And seeing this does not mean you excuse it. It means you stop personalizing everything. That is a major form of freedom. Because when difficult people act out, your first thought is no longer, what is wrong with me? It becomes, what pattern is being revealed here? That shift changes the emotional weight of the interaction. You can still protect yourself. You can still speak up. You can still leave. But you are no longer absorbing their behavior as a verdict on your worth. This is especially important when the difficult person is close to you. A family member, a partner, a coworker, a friend, someone whose opinion once carried emotional weight. When strangers are difficult, it may annoy you. When close people are difficult, it can destabilize you. Because the closer the relationship, the easier it is to confuse their behavior with your value. If a stranger dismisses you, you may move on. If someone you love dismisses you, it can reopen old questions. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Do I have to earn basic respect? Do I have to make myself easier to keep this connection? And that is why difficult relationships can become such intense training grounds. They do not only test your patience, they test your attachment wounds. They test your fear of abandonment. They test your longing to be chosen. They test your habit of sacrificing truth for closeness. And this is where most people either collapse or harden. They collapse by tolerating too much, or they harden by deciding never to care again. But there is a third path. You can stay open without staying unprotected. You can love without losing discernment. you can care without becoming captive. You can grieve someone's limitations without making those limitations your identity. That is the deeper training. Not becoming someone who feels nothing. Becoming someone who can feel deeply and still choose wisely. There is power in that. A quiet power, the kind that does not need to be performed. Now, in the middle of this journey, we need to name something clearly. Not every difficult person is meant to stay in your life. Some are teachers. Some are warnings. Some are assignments in boundaries. Some are mirrors. Some are consequences of an old version of you that no longer exists. And some are simply unsafe. The fact that someone can teach you does not mean they deserve continued access. A storm can teach you how to build a stronger house. That does not mean you invite the storm into your living room. This distinction matters, because the idea that difficult people are a training ground can be misused. It can become an excuse to endure what should be ended. That is not the message. The message is not, stay with difficult people because they help you grow. The message is, whatever their role in your life, do not waste the lesson. Sometimes the lesson is patience. Sometimes the lesson is emotional regulation. Sometimes the lesson is speaking up. Sometimes the lesson is leaving. Sometimes the lesson is not going back. Sometimes the lesson is realizing you have confused intensity with intimacy for too long. Growth does not always mean staying. Sometimes growth means recognizing when the training is complete. Because wise people do not romanticize pain. They learn from it, then make better decisions. They do not turn every wound into a philosophy that keeps them stuck. They turn experience into discernment. And discernment is one of the greatest gifts difficult people can give you if you pay attention. Discernment means you stop being impressed by charm without consistency. You stop trusting words without behavior. You stop calling emotional intensity connection. You stop calling guilt love. You stop calling control concern. You stop calling disrespect honesty. You stop calling instability passion. You begin to evaluate people by patterns, not moments. That is maturity. Because anyone can have a good moment. Anyone can apologize once. Anyone can speak beautifully when they want access back. Anyone can seem self-aware for one conversation. But patterns tell the truth. How do they respond when you say no? How do they speak when they are disappointed? How do they handle being wrong? How do they treat people who have less power? How do they behave when there is nothing to gain? How do they repair after harm? How do they respond to your boundaries once the performance ends? These questions protect you from illusion. And difficult people train you to ask them, not from bitterness, from wisdom. Because the old version of you may have listened to promises. The stronger version watches patterns. The old version may have been moved by apologies. The stronger version looks for change. The old version may have excused repeated harm because of occasional tenderness. The stronger version understands that a beautiful moment does not cancel a damaging pattern. That is clarity. And clarity feels painful at first because it removes the fantasy. But later, it becomes relief. You stop negotiating with evidence. You stop trying to turn someone into the version of them you wish existed. You stop using potential as a reason to ignore reality. This is where your life becomes lighter. Not because everyone becomes easier, because you stop making excuses for what is clear. And when you stop making excuses for what is clear, your decisions become cleaner. Your energy returns. Your mind quiets. Your body relaxes. You stop living in constant emotional translation. That is a form of freedom many people never experience. But here is another essential part of the training. Difficult people teach you how to communicate under pressure. Most people can communicate well when the environment is safe. They can be thoughtful, clear, measured, and kind. But pressure changes the room. A difficult person may interrupt you. They may twist your words. They may raise their voice. They may respond with sarcasm. They may deny what they said 5 minutes ago. They may demand an answer immediately. And suddenly, your communication collapses. You talk too fast. You explain too much. You become sharper than you intended. You withdraw completely. You say what will end the tension instead of what is true. This is where communication becomes training. Because mature communication is not simply saying the right words. It is staying connected to yourself while speaking them. A difficult person gives you practice in slowing down. You can say, "Let me finish." You can say, "That is not what I said." You can say, "I am willing to talk about this, but not with insults." You can say, "I need time to think before I respond." You can say, "We may see this differently." You can say, "I understand you are upset, and my answer is still no." These sentences are simple, but they require strength. Because the power is not just in the words. It is in your ability to remain present while saying them. The difficult person may not like your clarity. That does not make it less clear. They may push again. That does not mean you need to explain again. They may accuse you of being cold. That does not mean you need to become warmer to prove your goodness. They may try to pull you into an old rhythm. That does not mean you must dance. The more you practice clean communication, the more you begin to trust yourself. You realize you can handle tension without becoming cruel. You can disagree without collapsing. You can be firm without being dramatic. You can be calm without being passive. You can be kind without being weak. That is a powerful identity shift. Because once you know you can handle difficult conversations, you stop organizing your life around avoiding them. Avoidance becomes less necessary. People-pleasing becomes less seductive. Your truth becomes less expensive. And your relationships become more honest. Some will improve. Some will end. Both outcomes are information. Healthy people may not always enjoy your boundaries, but they can eventually respect them. Unhealthy people often treat your boundaries as an attack. That difference tells you where you are. Do not ignore it. And now here is where the training becomes even deeper. Difficult people teach you how to stop outsourcing your emotional state. This may be the central lesson, because the most painful part of dealing with difficult people is often not what they do. It is how much power they seem to have over your mood. One conversation can ruin your day. One message can tighten your chest. One comment can send your mind spinning. One look can make you feel small. One accusation can make you doubt your character. And when that happens, it can feel like they are controlling you. But more often, they are touching something inside you that has not yet been reclaimed. This is not blame. It is power. Because if your peace depends on them being reasonable, your peace is fragile. If your confidence depends on them validating you, your confidence is borrowed. If your mood depends on them treating you gently, your mood is externally managed. And if your identity depends on them seeing you accurately, your identity is not fully yours yet. Difficult people reveal where you have given emotional authority away. That revelation can hurt, but it can also liberate you. Because whatever you have given away can be taken back. You begin by noticing. My body is reacting. My mind wants to defend. My chest is tight because I feel accused. I am afraid they will think I am selfish. I want to say yes so this discomfort ends. This kind of noticing is powerful because it creates separation. You are no longer inside the reaction. You are observing it. And what you can observe, you can begin to govern. Not perfectly, but increasingly. The first victory may not be staying completely calm. The first victory may be noticing you are not calm before you speak. The second victory may be pausing for 3 seconds. The third may be choosing one clear sentence instead of a 10-minute defense. The fourth may be leaving the conversation before it damages you. The fifth may be not replaying it for the rest of the day. That is training. Small repetitions, under real pressure, over time. People often want transformation to feel dramatic, but most real transformation is quiet. It happens in the moment you do not take the bait. It happens in the moment you feel guilt and still honor your boundary. It happens in the moment you choose accuracy over intensity. It happens in the moment you stop trying to make an unreasonable person reasonable before you allow yourself peace. That is where you become free. And freedom does not mean you never feel hurt. It means hurt no longer automatically becomes surrender. It means anger no longer automatically becomes attack. It means fear no longer automatically becomes obedience. It means disappointment no longer automatically becomes self-doubt. You become less controlled by emotional weather. You become more rooted. And rooted people are not easily moved by every passing storm. This is why difficult people can become a strange kind of gift. Not because they are pleasant. Not because they are right. Not because you should thank them for the pain, but because they pressure test the person you are becoming. They reveal whether your peace is real or only circumstantial. They reveal whether your confidence exists only when you are praised. They reveal whether your boundaries collapse when challenged. They reveal whether your compassion has a spine. They reveal whether your communication can survive pressure. They reveal whether your identity belongs to you. That is why the training ground matters. A training ground is not a comfortable place. It is a place where capacity is built. You do not build strength by lifting what is effortless. You build strength by meeting resistance. The emotional life works the same way. Patience is built where irritation is present. Courage is built where fear is present. Clarity is built where confusion is present. Boundaries are built where pressure is present. Self-respect is built where old approval patterns are challenged. And peace is built where disturbance once ruled you. This does not mean you seek difficult people. It means when they appear, you do not let the experience be wasted. You ask better questions. What is this teaching me about my boundaries? What reaction pattern is being exposed? What am I tempted to prove? What am I afraid will happen if I stay calm? What responsibility is mine and what responsibility is not? What would self-respect choose here? What would I do if I no longer needed this person to understand me before I trusted myself? These questions are not soft. They are strong. They move you from reaction to leadership. And leadership begins inside. Before you lead a room, a team, a family, a business, a conversation, or a relationship, you must learn to lead your own state. Because if anyone can hijack your emotions, anyone can lead you. But when you can feel pressure and remain connected to your values, you become the leader of your own life. This is the kind of leadership difficult people train. Not positional leadership, inner leadership. The ability to stand in a charged moment and not abandon your center. The ability to speak truth without cruelty. The ability to protect peace without pretending nothing hurts. The ability to leave when staying would cost your dignity. The ability to stay calm without becoming silent in the wrong way. The ability to know when a conversation is worth having and when it has become a stage for someone else's dysfunction. That kind of leadership cannot be faked. It is forged. And often, it is forged in the presence of difficult people. But there is one final trap to understand. Once you begin growing, you may become proud of being the calm one. You may begin to identify as the mature one, the aware one, the emotionally intelligent one. And if you are not careful, that identity becomes another ego position. You start looking down on difficult people. You start using psychology to feel superior. You start diagnosing instead of relating. You start turning every interaction into proof that you are evolved and they are not. That is not growth. That is ego wearing better clothes. True growth makes you clearer, not colder. It makes you stronger, not superior. It makes you less reactive, not less human. The goal is not to become someone who cannot be touched. The goal is to become someone who can be touched without being controlled. There is a difference. A mature person can still feel sadness after a hard conversation. They can still feel disappointment when someone refuses accountability. They can still grieve the relationship they hoped would be healthier. They can still feel the sting of being misread. But they do not build a home inside those feelings. They let them move through. They learn. They adjust. They return to themselves. That return is everything. Because difficult people often pull you away from yourself. They pull you into their chaos, their standards, their accusations, their urgency, their need for control, their emotional weather. Your work is to return. Again and again. Return to your breath. Return to your values. Return to your boundary. Return to your clarity. Return to your body. Return to what is true. Return to the person you are choosing to become. That is the quiet discipline. And over time, something remarkable happens. The same behavior that once shattered you only informs you. The same tone that once pulled you into defense now reminds you to slow down. The same guilt tactic that once controlled you now reminds you to check your boundary. The same criticism that once defined you now passes through a stronger filter. The same chaos that once consumed you now reveals what kind of access someone should have. You become harder to destabilize. Not because you are numb, because you are trained. You have practiced. You have learned the difference between a trigger and a truth. You have learned the difference between compassion and collapse. You have learned the difference between explanation and self-betrayal. You have learned the difference between conflict and danger. You have learned the difference between someone being upset and you being wrong. You have learned the difference between being misunderstood and being lost. That is growth. Deep, practical, lived growth. And this is what difficult people can give you if you refuse to let them reduce you. They can become the place where you stop being so easily provoked. The place where you stop outsourcing your worth. The place where you stop over-explaining your boundaries. The place where you learn to see clearly under pressure. The place where you discover that peace is not the absence of difficult people. Peace is the presence of inner authority. And once you have that, life changes. You stop measuring your progress by whether everyone approves of you. You stop waiting for every relationship to be easy before you allow yourself to feel stable. You stop needing every person to be emotionally mature before you practice emotional maturity. You stop making your growth dependent on their behavior. That is freedom. Not perfect freedom. Human freedom. The kind you practice. The kind you return to. The kind that becomes more natural each time you choose yourself without becoming cruel. Each time you stay calm without becoming passive. Each time you speak clearly without needing to dominate. Each time you walk away without needing to make a scene. Think about the difficult person who has been occupying too much space in your mind. Not to blame them, not to excuse them, not to obsess over them, but to ask a cleaner question. What is this training in me? Maybe it is training your patience. Maybe it is training your boundary. Maybe it is training your courage. Maybe it is training your discernment. Maybe it is training your ability to stop seeking validation from people who do not know how to give it. Maybe it is training your willingness to leave what keeps asking you to abandon yourself. Only you can know. But once you see the lesson, the situation changes. The difficult person may remain difficult, but you are no longer merely suffering them. You are studying yourself. You are reclaiming power. You are turning friction into formation. In the end, difficult people do not create your strength. They reveal where it is still waiting to be built. They do not give you peace. They show you where peace must become internal. They do not define who you are. They test whether you remember. And slowly, quietly, you become the kind of person who can walk through tension without becoming tension. You become the kind of person who can be misunderstood without disappearing. You become the kind of person who can be challenged without being controlled. You become the kind of person who knows that peace is not something other people hand you when they finally behave correctly. Peace is something you build inside yourself until no difficult person can easily take it away. And that is when the training ground has done its work.